we're on a new second version of what I call this Lockdown Live, I think it's called. And today it's myself from Jacksonville Speedway, Adam Mackey with Track Enterprises down there on the bottom, and Matt Curl from Fairbury Speedway. But Matt has a lot of perspective in other things as well. I think we just wanted to kind of get together and, share some, I don't know, not thoughts between us more than anything about, where things sit with local racing in Illinois, and what each of our plans are in the coming weeks and months. And, we're doing this right after President Trump just had a long press conference outlining, his plan to reopen America. And after Governor Pritzker's daily press conference where we're all in Illinois, and, we kind of put that all together, and, don't know what we're all planning to do. But first, I guess, what have we been doing? Adam, you told me you needed to be off here by 8 because you have an iRace to announce. How much of that have you been doing?
About 1 to 2 a week. Just kind of keeps me in the game, getting a chance to check out the iRacing. Some of these guys are like professionals at it. And the group that I'm announcing tonight on Speed 51 at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, we get everything set up, but at 9 o'clock, they're like a professional group. These guys have won like 1,000 iRaces. I was looking at some of their stats. It's pretty crazy. So you have to be a special type of driver to get into that class. I actually do some iRacing myself again. I did it back in 2011 and 2012, then just got busy, got away from it. And whenever this was all happening about a month ago, I said, I'm going to get back in it. So I bought a computer, got my wheel and pedals back out. They're like from 2007. So they're not the latest and greatest. So I'm a budget racer, right? But it's fun. It's something to do to pass the time. And I've actually really been enjoying that, and just hoping for the best that we get to see some real racing, do some real racing coming up soon.
So what's your best class of cars for iRacing? Like, what are you
So believe it or not, so iRace, when I did it years ago, all they had was asphalt. They didn't have dirt racing really yet. And my wheel and pedals aren't that great. So I stick to the asphalt right now. I practiced a dirt car the other night, a dirt street stock at Lanier, and it wasn't the greatest experience of my life. But I'm pretty good in a legend car. I've got a great setup for a legend car, and I race legends on asphalt. I picked up 4 wins in my first 20 races. So
really?
I'm pretty good in the legends. I got to work on the late model, the super late model, that type of thing.
You're going to have a bounty on you. Matt, what have you been doing lately?
Well, Adam, the asphalt's to get to the dirt track. So you're going to have to get to that dirt race in iRacing to be good. I've done
asphalt. It doesn't matter.
That's true. I've done 0 iRacing. Literally haven't seen much of that. I know it's what we have kind of got into right now.
Wait a minute, Matt. Last weekend there was a huge USAC race at Fairbury Speedway. Did you have to take tickets, work with dirt, do anything to make that happen?
Yeah, we had to have we had to take temperatures, and we had to do the whole 9 yards to get that race going. But it was really neat. I did see highlights and stuff. I got busy over the weekend, and it was neat. Spridge had reached out and wanted to do a race there with USAC, and it's just cool that Fairbury has been a part of the iRacing now for a couple of years or a year and a half, and it's cool. It's neat to see the drivers, World of Outlaw sprints, USAC mods, late models on the speedway, and it really hasn't changed a whole lot, with the characteristic of the track and stuff. It looks a little bit lighter, it's a day race. I don't think we've ever had a day race at Falls, but we might get into that, depending on what's going on this year.
You already Adam, you didn't quite get a racing already this year. Matt, you've already been out west and put races on and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah. That was incredible going down to Arizona. So I got a little bit of a fix to get me through a few months, but I've been staying really busy. My home is the racetrack, so I consider that home, so I can be there every day. And we've done some projects around the track here. We're right in the middle of a big bleacher project that we're putting in our pit area. They're starting up on Monday, so we're essential business. Being able to put some bleachers up, but basically, just getting some things done around the track here, and mainly we're in the office. I'm in the office a lot, really trying to, just like you guys, strategically kind of maybe mentally plan out what possibilities are there and put in plans and action plans for what could and might be. But I think, I think what you talked about earlier, Kenny, here is just trying to focus on what really realistic expectations that we can all kind of, really understand over the next month, 2 months, maybe even the whole summer, as we get into something that all of us on here are really, really passionate about, and that's late model or dirt track racing, any type of racing.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about, what maybe they expect here, and we have no idea, but Adam's got a story to tell about putting on a race this year in Pensacola, right?
Yeah.
Have you been affected by COVID yet, Adam, in your travel?
Yeah, we had a race, an ARCA race, March 13th and 14th in Pensacola, Florida, at Five Flags Speedway, the home of the Snowball Derby. And I was driving down on the Wednesday, which would have been Wednesday the 11th, my birthday of March. And as I'm driving down, it's about 7 o'clock at night, and I get a notification, or they're talking on satellite radio, the NBA season has been suspended. Drive a little further, and I hear that, somebody else has, a professional player has it. Drive a little further, and you hear the Major League Baseball's talking about suspending spring training. Then you hear, all of these other things, these dominoes are starting to fall, and I'm getting a little nervous. I'm saying, do I stop here? Do I finish my trip? Because this isn't looking good. At this point, NASCAR was still scheduled to race in Atlanta. So I'm thinking, as long as Atlanta races, we're going to get to race our race at Pensacola Friday and Saturday. So Thursday morning, we go to the racetrack, and we're on business as usual, sitting in the office waiting on a call from ARCA to see if anything's going to change. At that point, NASCAR was still on for Atlanta, but we're starting to hear that NASCAR might do a no fans race at Atlanta. Just race, but no fans in the stands. Well, that isn't going to work for us. We need fans in the stands to put on an ARCA race. But anyway, we didn't get any calls. It sounded like the race was going to go on. So it's about noon. I go out and start taking pictures of the facility. Hey, we're getting ready to go, because, fans are getting a little nervous. They hear the NBA season suspended. So I'm getting a picture of the finish line, the guy painting it, making it look all good. And I get a phone call from Bob Sargent, and I'm like, this isn't good. He says, come back to the office. I walked down to the office, and he said, I think we're done. So, 4 hours later, eventually all of the everything had fallen into place where we had to cancel, because NASCAR ended up going to fans only, no fans. And then a day later, they scratched the whole deal. And we were just kind of put in a position. There was no way we were going to be able to have an ARCA race at Five Flags if NASCAR wasn't having their NASCAR race at Atlanta. So, yeah, that was a long trip to Pensacola, Florida. And then looking back at it, with the weather the way it's been around here lately, I probably should have just stayed in Pensacola, because I could have got about as much done down there as I've gotten done up here. So, but nonetheless, that was not a good experience, and that's a big event for us. It was a great event last year, and we were looking forward to getting it in this year. And then now it's a matter of each week canceling the next event. So hopefully those cancellations will end here in the next couple of months.
Sure. So just as you mentioned weather, I know for all three of us, man, this time of year, that's all we do is check the weather, check the forecast, all that. I honestly cannot tell you what it's supposed to do tomorrow. It is April 16th. It's the first time in years where I don't have a clue. I woke up, it was snowing today. I had no idea it was going to snow today. Last year, I could have told you exactly when it was going to start and exactly when it was going to end. It's just weird how just things get you out of your normal routines and like watching and worrying about the weather. Something I haven't done in a long time, to be real honest.
Yeah, no question. The only reason why I know what's going to do tomorrow, because we're supposed to get 2 to 5 inches of snow. So I had to get everything put away and stuff so it wouldn't get, trampered with snow. And we got snow a year ago on this same week. So it doesn't surprise me. But I agree with you, Kenny. We've definitely, it's out of the ordinary for our promoters, this time of year in April, that we're not on the track. And to be honest with you, I've been in the office a lot the last couple of weeks and working on the grounds this week. We're gonna release some information soon about what our next 60 days looks like, and there's gonna be some changes.
Oh, absolutely.
we have to come to the realization that we're not in some other states that are a little bit more lenient on letting things go. I mean, we are in the state of Illinois where we have to follow those regulations, and all of us on this call here and this, we go by those rules. We're good promoters, and we don't go around the back door and do things the wrong way. So, we have to lead from example, and that's just what we're gonna have to do. So, I mean, as we come across here, there's gonna be fans that are gonna be really knocking down the doors to get to races. But I think unfortunately, that's gonna, we're gonna have to wait a little bit, on this to determine, and hope that everybody kind of gives all of us, including all the promoters in dirt track racing, some attitude here to give us a chance to work things out and to get through a tough year that I've never seen before. And I'm sure Adam, you and Kenny have never seen anything like this.
I think, Matt, you say it best, is you're going to see, and I think we're going to get a lot of pressure, to be real honest, from certain factions. As President Trump said tonight, certain states are going to be able to, do things earlier than others. It's just kind of the reality of it. There's no doubt that, we live in a state that's dominated by Chicago. It's an urban area. I'm sure there's a lot of risk up there. But people from Chicago travel around. I kind of understand a little bit of it. Not sure how many passes they make through Macon, Illinois, Jacksonville, Illinois, or Fairbury, Illinois in a day, but I get it. And but we're going to start to see over the next several weeks racetracks that have different, each racetrack has not only its own character and like, we also have sort of our own business models. I mean, I hate to really say it that way, but you're going to see some tracks that maybe can make it off of people in the pit, say out in, Wyoming or somewhere, or with spread out fans in the bleachers, where you only let 100 in. I think we're going to see tracks that kind of go to what I call the drag racing model of big entry fees, where the participants are kind of paying their own way in without a lot of fans. But we're going to see racetracks around the country, some get pretty aggressive. And as I've kind of said on the few Facebook posts and stuff that I put out, is, my focus over the next while is to make sure I have a racetrack 3 or 4 years from now, not just 3 or 4 months from now. So I know I don't plan on probably being the first guy out of the gate to be creative or to be, kind of getting in the really deep gray area of the rules at any given time. And I know neither of you guys are either, and I'm not saying anybody that we know, like local guys are. I mean, we have a great group of promoters here in Illinois, and we all know them all, and they're all good folks. And, everybody kind of has to, look out for themselves to a certain degree. And with that come different priorities. We all have our own priorities. For some of them, it could be that they just absolutely have to make something happen this week to, get the power bill paid or something, as you look at things, I think you really are going to have to size up that person's or that track's, individual situation. But I think probably the three of us are going to, here, if people are racing, and kind of why I brought us all together is just so some racers and fans could just get a sense of what some of us in Central Illinois are kind of looking at. I think Matt said it best, like, we're in Illinois. I mean, that's where we're at. And it might be a bit. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think, I was actually trying to bring up the page, see if anybody was asking questions. I know that's going to be coming up. But honestly, I think the first step will be being able to do some test and tunes. And we've had a lot of people ask us about test and tunes. And, it's obviously not a fan-driven deal. And you could probably safely social distance for test and tune. But right now, with stay at home and whatever, we're trying to, walk that guideline, pretty softly right now. And maybe in a couple weeks, we might be able to do test and tune. That might be the first thing that happens, just to get the gates open and give people something to do in, outside air on acres and acres of property where you can easily spread out without any issues. Then the next step will be, can you race? And can you do it with pay-per-view? Can you do it with fans spread out in the stands? I mean, there's some options there. It's just you got to wait for kind of some okay from the state, which today I think is the first real positive news we've had for a while. I mean, it's been negative, 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 and I thought today we're at least seeing some positivity out of it. So there is maybe some opening on the horizon coming up.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I think the first events the fans attend, wherever they attend them, are going to be, once fans are let in the door, it's going to be a limited deal. And then to be real honest, I'll bring up, as a promoter, you're going to have to sit. I mean, it's a different kind of deal. It's kind of like the way I run my World Atlas Sprint Car Show. Like I know how many butts I can put in. Then I got to do the math backwards and sort of figure out how do you make that work with that number of butts in the seat. So if we go from, man, I know both of your Lincoln too, all of your venues hold a lot of people, more than I do. I did take a piece of graph paper out today just to waste some time and like put X's in, on count, and I came up with maybe 250 maybe that I could put in the grandstands of Jacksonville, following the social distancing just dead perfect. And that we might be months from that. I'm just saying that's the first thing that's going to happen, at best. And then you're kind of like, okay, how do you make an event with 250 people like not just be a total butt kicking, especially when, and everybody's in different positions, but, it's not like you're going to go to some sponsor. I mean, you could. I mean, there's certain people that are going to support racetracks, don't get me wrong, but you can't math that show out like we all math shows out and then say, hey, I can do this without a sponsor and just go for it. And, that could set you back for the year. So I think there's just some things we're going to have to do, even when we get to that point where, as far as I'm concerned, that schedule I put out went back in January. That thing might still be up on the website. Yeah, that's it, Matt. But not only logistically, but even financially, depending on what we're allowed to do or not do, that's probably not what my season's going to look like. We do hope to get in our big events. I know you, Matt. I know you, Adam, do too. I know my World of Outlaw Sprint Car race on May 6th, I thought I was going to see it was in the next batch of cancellations, and I'm not going to cancel anything for them, but, I would be quite shocked if we had 2,000 people sitting in the grandstands on May the 6th in Jacksonville. But, we still, in talking to Carlton and everybody, we still plan to do that later in the year. And, man, I know you fully, don't even need to get into it, plan to do the Prairie Dirt Classic, one of the best events in the whole state of Illinois and the nation. We're going to hopefully be able to find ways to make these big events happen, but they aren't going to be the first events any of us do. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question. We started at the ground and working our way up. I mean, everything from going to the mayor of Fairbury, talking with him. I had a phone call with him just recently, and there's a lot of support out there. And I've talked with the Livingston County Health Department, and now we take those steps all the way up to the top, and we had to start somewhere. So I'm very active with that to make sure that when we do get to whatever model that we can do, that we're going to do it right. And then I think if we have an action plan to be able to put that in place, I think that we're going to be able to see and get support from that, not only from government officials, but we're also going to get that assurance from the fans, because I think that's what we haven't really talked about yet in this conversation is what really are the fans going to, we have really good fans out there. And there's been some talks about, possibly doing streaming events, without fans at tracks, it's kind of going kind of viral right now around the country is who's going to be the first one to kind of break out and, do something. You kind of hear some chatter and stuff. And there's no question that all of us have kind of thrown that idea out there. If you're not a good promoter, why you wouldn't be, thinking about that. But the realistic is you have to be, you have to do it right. And you have to put that plan in place to make sure that the fans are safe, the drivers are safe, and how do you tell, not only the fans of Fairbury, but the fans of Jacksonville, Macon, Lincoln, Farmer City, that they can't go watch a race at a track.
Right.
I think that's tough to do. If we put an action plan into place where we can only have 100 or 125 people on the grounds at Fairbury, and you have to tell crew people that have been coming to you and supporting you and sweat and stuff that they can't be a part of that. That's tough to do. Whether you can accept to do that, maybe at desperate times, maybe. But it's just a realistic, reality of where we're at, and
that's something you want to do.
Tough.
Yeah, and like Adam, I think we're talking earlier. You really have to not only have a plan together, and I think we're going to end up having to take that plan to certain officials around us to get their support when that time comes. But everything from how your concession stand is organized, Adam and I talked about earlier, the way you take tickets. Do you take money? Do you only take cards? Do they get a ticket? Do they get a wristband? What's your pit sign-in procedure? Are we all using the same pin? All that, in your concession stand, do you have barriers? If you got urinals right next to each other, do you mark off every other urinal? Really things from top to bottom that, I know we've all thought through a lot of those things, but when you get really mapping out an event in this scenario, you're gonna have a lot of things to take into consideration.
Yeah, and honestly, every facility is a little bit different. Like your concession stand's a little bit tougher, being they walk inside than ours, where there's 3 different lines. But even then, you've got to spread your lines out, and I think people will self-control that a little bit. They already are at stores, even if the stores don't have markings on the ground. You notice people are kind of just taking that distance and using it themselves, not necessarily because they're scared of the person around them. Just I think they're scared that the person around them might be offended if they get within 6 feet of them.
Right.
So I think some of that, and then there's some people that will just get right up on the next person. So you're going to have to kind of police that a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely the lines getting in, which you can control. I mean, that's not a big deal. Somebody can be out there and kind of say, hey, we need to spread apart. The lines at the restroom if it's busy. But of course, I think there's going to be a number guideline where you're not going to end up having lines at the restroom. You're not going to end up having lines at the concession, at least at first, because I think there's going to be probably some numbers that we have to go by, and we'll see how that plays out. But I think at least what we saw today, if you can social distance at your place, and we're fortunate that we have big facilities with acres and acres of property, there is a chance that we're going to be able to do some things where if you're a small, and I saw in the guidelines they put out in phase 1, like bars aren't included. Well, a lot of them are really tight and people like to socialize inside of bars. So that would be probably a second phase or a third phase for something like that. But a big open air facility where you're outside, we definitely have room to do some social distancing. It's just going to be, a little extra work, no doubt.
Right. And, you look at just the business model on, this is what's been driving me crazy. And our mayor, I know you met him, Adam, Andy Ezard from Jacksonville, good friend, and, at the racetrack a lot. He got a call from Governor Pritzker yesterday, just the two of them talked about 20 minutes. And I talked to Andy a little after that. And he was reminding the mayor of the fact that, I think he even used the fairgrounds as an example. I'm not sure if he used the racetrack, but was pointing out that, I'd made a Twitter post or something like 50 people spread out across fairgrounds is a lot different than 50 people crowded into Starbucks in Chicago. And I think with President Trump's thing today, I saw out of Wisconsin, and even it sounded like Governor Pritzker, I think there's finally starting to be the understanding that you can't just set a number, that numbers can't apply everywhere, that there has to be, some realistic exception to that number if a plan is well thought out. And that's kind of all I've been trying to push for and ask for is don't just give me a number, 10. What good does that do? Let's talk about the real problem. And if I can put 100 people in a place and make it safer than 10 people in another place and make it safe for 100 people, then the number really doesn't matter. And also hope to get in another thing I know that Andy brought up with the governor was getting kind of local officials involved. We're all close to our local officials. I think our local officials, I know Matt, you're close to yours. They trust your judgment. You'd involve them. I'm sure both of you would involve your local officials in your plans. Adam Mefford chief of police, races here in Jacksonville or did last year. He's out here all the time. It's not like I can hide from anybody, right? So I think there's a certain degree of trust that we can take to local officials if we're given that opportunity. And, and then when we have a big event, even like a PDC or something, I know you're going to be, Matt, working with your local people, making sure that you have a plan. When the PDC does happen this year, I'm sure it'll be a little different than it was last year, right? But I'm confident that if they give you a chance to put Matt Curl thought into how to run a Prairie Dirt Classic under the current circumstances, it'd be a safe event.
Yeah, I mean, that's for all the promoters that are looking at their season, trying to figure that out. I mean, that's definitely, something that, I'm looking at just as if, Adam and you are doing for your big show. So when we're putting a lot of time and effort in those, I saw a poll out there, and I mean, whether it could be fake news or not or whatever, but you see some of these, credible polls and stuff, and they polled a number of people about, how many people would go, to a sporting event now, based on, what the circumstances have been over the last month or so. And surprisingly, it was pretty low. I thought it was, lower than I thought it would be, and 33% of the people would not, would go. 66 would not. I think in the racing industry, that's probably flopped. I think that, they're just, it's not a Cubs game, it's not an NFL game, the ticket sales are different, you want dirt in your beer, so I mean, the kind of, the way that kind of sets up, I could see that. But, taking what you said, Kenny, I mean, we're for sure, working with so many new circumstances that none of us has really ever had to think about. And this is probably something that's going to go on for a number of years. It may never stop in what we do with our pre-planning now for events. When it does kind of go, let's say down the road, whatever that number is, and we finally feel like everything's open and there's no restrictions at all, you're still going to see these things that we learned over the last 6 months, or, the stuff that or let's say at the end of the year, when we look back over this whole 2020 season, we're going to plan for those down the road. It's probably just better off that we do that and are safer for our fans and drivers and so forth. And, Adam brought up, and you guys brought up good points with, there's so many things from restrooms to tickets to, the pins they use and stuff. You don't think about that, but, people are going to think about that on the other side. So you better beat them to the punch on that. So, but I am encouraged, like you said, Kenny, I have a direct link to the governor's office for the, first time I caught a break last week. And, so it's really not what, it's, when you come to some information that you really need. And so when you have those links like that, you just take advantage of it and you want to prepare for what's coming down the road. I mean, I think we kind of all understand that, this isn't going to be something to where on May 1st, we're all going to go back racing. No. I mean, if people are thinking that we're going racing on May 1st, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's just not going to happen. Not in the way that we thought, and stuff. So hopefully, it's not too much longer after that we can start to put some procedures in play for all of us to get a race night in here, a race night in there. It's maybe not every week. Maybe we can't afford to put those shows on every week, just with the numbers, like you said, put X's and O's and some, stuff like that. But I think that we are going to race this year, no question that we're going to race. When we're going to race, that'll be to be determined. But I have a really good feeling that we're going to be able to get our Prairie Dirt Classic in one way or another. And we're going to, work with our local officials and our fans to make sure that it's a great event, one that we can be proud of and go forward. And if that's the only race we get in this year, probably a lot of planning and stuff, but it may be, I don't know. We really don't know. And that's, I think, the honesty that we're, trying to put out to our fans and sponsors is we really don't know yet. And, we could be racing a lot earlier. We could be racing later. I don't know.
Sounds good. Adam, I'm going to wrap this up so you can get to your big announcing gig. But I hope our fans out there know. I just give them a sense of what kinds of things we're thinking about when we, get messages like how quick can we race? Man, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and I think we're all being aggressively cautious. And I know we all talk, more than people probably think we do. And when the time comes to put out a schedule, I'll bet we're talking to try to coordinate. Definitely Adam and I, with Lincoln, Macon, and Jackson, are kind of in the same, same area. And just like we do every year, we'll be working on who wants to race this week, who wants to race that week. And Matt, I know you'll participate in that kind of stuff too, because it might be a deal where, you know, we're spreading races out to give every track a chance to sort of have something a little bit. Might be a little bit of that. Certainly be more cooperation going on, even more than usual, I'll bet. And, you know, with that, anybody got anything else to add before I hit the end button?
No, I think it's good, Kenny, and I think today was a positive step in the right direction from what we heard nationally, and now it's going to be a matter of, you know, when do we get the okay state-wise, and I think we're within a month of seeing some steps being taken to open businesses back up, maybe even a few weeks. It won't be everything, like they said, but I think it's going to be some steps, and when we get some of those steps, then I think we can start to do some things. It might just be test and tune to start with, but I think we're going to get to that point where we can have some events in one way or another.
Right. Get people back to the racetrack. It'll be a good time.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen tomorrow.
And it all comes down to really numbers too. I mean, I think that we're just at those guidelines. So, you know, we have, I mean, I've worked over the last, you know, 3 or 4 weeks to set certain action plans in. So what if this happens, you know, and do I catch a break? And, you know, we've all been, you know, we talked about sponsors earlier. Are we going to get support from sponsors and stuff like that? And, you know, there's sponsors out there that want to get their name out, you know, and this is a prime time. So you may see some, you know, hot spots around the country that throw a bunch of money into a streaming race or something like that. And like I said, we talked about earlier, we're all kind of, you know, that'd be cool and stuff. And it may have to work out right, but there's so many boxes you have to check to make that happen, because that's not going to be sustainable in our industry. You know, there's good money in our industry, but not that much money.
Right. No doubt about it. Hey guys, thanks. Get back to what you were doing. And,
Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks a lot.
Talk on the phone here before long. See you
Have a
both.
good night.
See ya.
All right, bye.